In the entire history of the world, there are only 9 times humans have ever introduced mongooses to an area and actually managed to completely wipe them out. Just 9. And only one of those happened on an island big enough to make it a nightmare, Amami in Japan. And to get to that point, it took them 25 years. The real question isn't why Japan brought mongooses to Amami in the first place. The question is, why is releasing an animal so incredibly easy, but getting rid of them almost impossible? And how did this one island become the only massive exception to the rule? To understand how they beat the odds, we have to look back at a decision made right there in 1979. It was backed by science, cheered on by experts, and guaranteed to succeed. Except, it triggered a chain reaction no one saw coming. Back in the late 1970s, the southern islands of Japan were facing a genuine medical crisis. The culprit was the habu snake, a highly venomous pit viper whose bite could end a life in a matter of hours. To give you some context, by 1980, around 400 people were being bitten every single year, and a terrifying number of those cases were fatal. Now, you might think the obvious solution is just to use an antivenom, and Japan had one. But here was the catch. The antivenom was a liquid that required constant refrigeration. If you know anything about rural island communities back then, they didn't exactly have a stable power grid. No electricity meant no cold storage. And guess where almost all the snake bites were happening? Exactly. In those remote, completely powerless rural areas. So, facing a problem with no logistical solution, the authorities turned to biological control using one species to hunt down another. Today, that might sound risky, but in 1979, it wasn't a crazy idea at all. It was a proven, widely accepted scientific method with a solid track record of success across the globe. The only question left for the experts was, which animal do we send in? The mongoose was chosen for 3 undeniable reasons. First, they are lightning fast. A mongoose's reflexes are quick enough to dodge a snake's strike and counterattack with pinpoint accuracy. Second, their bodies are practically built to tank snake venom. They possess a unique evolutionary trait involving their acetylcholine receptors, which essentially blocks the venom from binding to their nervous system. It's like a natural biological shield. And third, this strategy had already worked wonders in other parts of the world, from India all the way to the Caribbean. Everything lined up perfectly. So in 1979, Japan released exactly 30 mongooses onto the island of Amami. The logic was flawless, the science was sound, and the experts were completely on board. Nobody in that room asked the one simple question that would change everything. By 1993, the Japanese Ministry of the Environment realized something was terribly wrong. The mongoose population on Amami was exploding way faster than anyone had predicted. Fast forward to the year 2000, and that initial group of just 30 mongooses had ballooned into a massive army of 10,000 individuals. But what about the habu snakes? Well, technically, their numbers were going down. But when researchers took a closer look, they discovered a bizarre truth. The mongooses had absolutely nothing to do with it. The snake population was dropping because of better safety measures by locals and changes in their natural habitat. In reality, even though they lived on the exact same small island, the mongooses and the habu snakes almost never crossed paths. And the reason why comes down to a glaringly simple detail that absolutely nobody bothered to check back in 1979. The habu snake is strictly nocturnal, it hunts at night. The mongoose, on the other hand, is diurnal, it operates entirely during the day. They were sharing the exact same piece of land, but they were living in 2 completely different biological time zones. This meant that the mongooses weren't hunting snakes at all. Not because they couldn't, but because they had absolutely no reason to. When the sun came up and the mongooses woke up to hunt, the snakes were already deep hiding in underground burrows. And when the snakes crawled out at night, the mongooses were already fast asleep. Why would a mongoose waste its energy looking for a hidden venomous viper when easier prey, like local rabbits, birds, and frogs, were running around during the day shift? The question that blew up the entire project wasn't some highly complex scientific riddle. It was the most basic, fundamental question you could possibly ask about 2 predators. Do they actually ever meet? When a new apex predator suddenly drops into an ecosystem that has been perfectly stable for thousands of years, you don't get a new balance. You get a complete freefall. The native species on Amami had spent generations living without any mammalian predators like the mongoose. They didn't know how to run. They didn't know how to hide. They literally had zero survival mechanisms for this specific threat because, in their world, this threat had never existed. Think of it like playing a high-stakes game where your opponent completely changes the rules, but nobody bothers to tell you. And this is exactly why islands are so incredibly fragile compared to massive continents. On a mainland, an invasive species hits walls of resistance from every direction. They have to compete with local predators, fight off unfamiliar parasites, and navigate complex terrain. But on an isolated island, there is absolutely nothing standing in their way except the physical shoreline. A limited coastline doesn't stop a predator, it just traps the prey, turning the whole island into a closed room with nowhere to run. Within just 20 years, the impact was devastating. The natural habitat of several small native species on the island shrank by a staggering 40%. The primary target of the mongooses became the amami rabbit. Biologists call these rabbits living fossils because they are the last surviving branch of an ancient Asian rabbit lineage that disappeared from the mainland millions of years ago. Today, they only exist on 2 tiny isolated islands on the planet. The mongoose population pushed them so close to the edge that they had to be placed on the endangered species list, alongside 14 other endemic species facing total annihilation. You have to remember, Amami Oshima is a protected UNESCO World Heritage Site. That means whatever is lost here cannot be replaced anywhere else on Earth. The authorities couldn't just sit back and let nature take its course. Because nature wasn't adjusting, the entire system was collapsing toward a point of no return. By the early 2000s, Japan realized they had to fix their mistake, and they launched an aggressive eradication program on Amami Oshima. But their first move, setting up thousands of standard cages along the roads, was a complete disaster. The success rate was basically zero. It turns out mongooses aren't stupid. They didn't care about generic traps because the setup completely ignored their daily habits and sharp senses. So, the scientists had to throw away the old playbook and rebuild the entire system from scratch. They engineered brand new traps with highly specific shapes and entry dimensions, tailored precisely to the exact size of a mongoose. This was brilliant because it kept the island's native birds and small mammals from accidentally getting caught. Next, they formulated custom chemical lures and high-potency scent baits to manipulate the predator's tracking instincts. Specialized sniffer dogs were flown in to pinpoint high-density breeding zones deep in the wilderness. And by 2005, the government deployed specialized tactical squads, combining local woodsmen and wildlife experts to patrol the dense forests and steep mountain ridges on strict, unyielding schedules. By the time the operation wrapped up, a staggering 32,000 mongooses had been captured and removed from the ecosystem. The absolute last specimen was caught in April 2018. After that single capture, everything went quiet. For 6 long years, intensive tracking networks found absolutely nothing. No tracks, no droppings, no sightings. Finally, in 2024, the Japanese Ministry of the Environment made the historic announcement: the mongoose population on Amami Oshima was officially completely wiped out. Now, some viewers might ask, why is this global achievement so incredibly rare? Why does the history book only show 9 successful cases? Because complete eradication doesn't mean trapping 99% of the population. It means hunting down the single last one. It's like cleaning up a digital virus. If you leave a fraction of a percent behind, it just duplicates. To capture that final animal, the entire state apparatus, funding, and tracking infrastructure must run at maximum capacity for years after the sightings stop. Because if even one single breeding pair survives in those mountains, the clock resets, and the entire 25-year nightmare starts all over again. To truly understand how incredible Japan's victory on Amami Oshima actually is, we need to look at what happened when other countries tried the exact same thing. Because Japan wasn't the first to make this choice. Take Hawaii, for example. Back in the 1880s, plantation owners were losing massive amounts of money to sugarcane rats. They heard about how the mongoose had successfully cleared out pests in the Caribbean, so they decided to copy the plan. In 1883, they brought 72 mongooses over from Jamaica and released them onto the big island of Hawaii. Soon after, they introduced them to Maui, Molokai, and Oahu. And guess what? The exact same blind spot caught them off guard. The rats operated entirely at night, while the mongooses hunted strictly during the day. Nobody had bothered to ask that one simple question. But unlike Japan, Hawaii didn't launch an aggressive eradication campaign early on. By the time anyone realized how bad the situation was, the mongoose population had exploded across the landscape like wildfire. Today, mongooses are completely hard-coded into the ecosystems of almost every major Hawaiian island. The government formally classifies them as impossible to eradicate under current conditions. The cost of this delay was catastrophic. At least 8 endemic bird species in Hawaii are now completely extinct. All of them were sitting on the federal endangered species list before vanishing forever. Then there is Jamaica, which is an even darker story. After their mongoose population overran the island, the local reptile and wild bird populations completely collapsed. But ecosystems are like a house of cards. You pull one card out, and the whole structure shifts. With no native birds or lizards left to eat ticks and insects, a massive tick plague exploded across the country. These parasites began transmitting deadly diseases directly to livestock and humans. When the crisis hit, the British colonial government essentially threw their hands up and claimed that nature would eventually correct itself. But nature didn't correct itself. The critical difference between Japan's success and the absolute failures in Hawaii and Jamaica didn't come down to superior technology or having more money. It came down to a razor-thin window of time. It was that fleeting historical moment when the mongoose population was still small enough that total eradication was physically, biologically possible. Japan stepped right through that window before it slammed shut. Hawaii and Jamaica missed it entirely. Once you let the clock run out on an ecosystem, there is no going back. The story of the mongoose is almost always told as a cautionary tale about a dangerous, destructive, invasive species. But if you look closely, this isn't actually a story about the mongoose at all. Think about it. The mongoose did exactly what its biology designed it to do: eat, survive, and reproduce. There was absolutely nothing wrong with its behavior. The breakdown happened somewhere else entirely, right inside a quiet conference room back in 1,879 inches, Hawaii. And then all over again in 1,979 inches, Japan, to prevent decades of ecological disaster. Those officials didn't need a high-tech laboratory or million-dollar computer simulations. They just needed one person to stand up and ask a basic, common-sense question. Do these two animals actually ever run into each other in the wild? But they didn't, and the truth is, Japan didn't succeed because they were smarter than anyone else, or because they asked that question from day one. They didn't. Japan won this war because when the consequences of their mistake finally surfaced, they mobilized their entire infrastructure and acted before the ecosystem crossed a permanent line of no return. Catching that fleeting window of opportunity is incredibly rare, and it matters far more than just having a technically correct plan or throwing unlimited money at a problem. Today on Amami Oshima, the native Amami rabbits are slowly rebuilding their population, completely free from fear. The mongoose is entirely gone. Out of that tiny global list of just 9 successful mongoose eradications in human history, Amami Oshima stands completely alone as the only one achieved on a massive island scale. By the way, if you found this deep dive into ecosystem loops fascinating, hit that subscribe button. It really helps us bring more hidden histories to light, because the reality is, this battle isn't completely finished. Just a short distance away on Okinawa, where the mongooses were introduced about 70 years earlier than on Amami Oshima, the environment is much hotter, more chaotic and closer to their natural habitat. Up in the northern forests, workers are still fighting to hold the line, using heavy L-shaped fences buried deep under the dirt. They aren't trying to stop the animals from climbing over, they are trying to stop them from digging under. If even a single breeding pair slips out of Okinawa and hitches a ride back to Amami Oshima, 25 years of grueling work vanishes instantly. That global number of 9 successful cases is still dangerously small.